Good afternoon and welcome back to the afternoon session. My name is Brendan Carney and I'm the Business Development Manager for YuMe UK. And we're here today to ask the question, does size matter? Given that I'm only a few inches short of being officially registered a giant, I would argue yes, size does matter. But of course we're not talking about the size of my ego, we're talking about screen size. And in particular, how does that relate to advertising? So this is a subject very close to our hearts at YuMe. It's probably worth me giving a bit of background on us, who we are and what we do. So YuMe are a video advertising technology company. Put simply, we provide publishers with the technology to deliver video across all devices. So be that laptops and desktop PCs, smartphones, tablets, or connected TVs. We were founded in 2004 in Redwood City, California, and we quickly built up quite a large publisher base using that technology, the video ad server. After the first couple of years, we got a lot of those publishers coming to us and asking us to help them out with the demand side as well, so actually could not just provide the technology, but also provide the advertising to go with it. So it made sense for us to launch the second part of our business, which is the network ad sales. So we now have sales offices all across North America and Western Europe, dealing with all the major agencies and big brands to run video advertising campaigns across all different devices. So we're known for video on all platforms, but in the UK particularly, we're well known for smartphones and tablets. And this is partly to do with the fact that we had this technology and came to market with it at the right time, and partly to do with the way that the agencies are set up in the UK. And we'll go on to talk a little bit more about that later. So to understand what we mean about screen size, we're talking about different devices. And so to get a better understanding of how things are now, let's look at the past. You don't have to go much further back than 10 years. And the living room looked like this, centered around the television, not too much distraction, just one device. That TV probably not connected to the internet. There was probably internet access within this house, but very likely through a desktop PC or a laptop, unlikely to be through Wi-Fi. Fast forward to 2013, and the living room's full of distractions. So TV is still central to this living room, but more and more often this TV is connected to the internet. We're seeing smartphones, tablets and laptops all cluttering up this space, meaning there's a whole load more screens for us to be targeting with our advertising. So this screen fragmentation is increasing and it continues to do so. In fact, the IAB now reports smartphone penetration of being at 64%. IDC project that tablet sales will overtake that of laptops by 2014. And in 2012, Nielsen saw the first decline in households with TVs. So given that there's actually more TVs in each individual household, this is an increase in the number of houses that didn't have any television of any kind. So with the screen fragmentation increasing, media planning, advertising is becoming more difficult, not just from an operational point of view, but from a technology point of view. How do we get these ads into all these different screens? So we decided to take on some research and we partnered up with our friends at Decipher to carry out this study. And the research was split into three hypotheses. The first being that mobile marketing as a separate function is now redundant. Advertising activity is more likely to be based on content types across devices. So at the moment, the UK agencies are very much split into device teams. Many agencies will have a mobile-specific team planning budgets just for mobile devices, completely separate from their plans for TV and digital. Hypothesis one is arguing that this is a little bit out of date and we should more be looking at content regardless of the device. The second hypothesis says that consumers and advertisers will behave the same around a specific content type, irrespective of whether they're on a mobile, tablet or a laptop. So historically, publishers may have saw it as best practice to make mobile versions of their site a little bit lighter, a little bit less of the content available. The argument here is that we shouldn't be thinking about delivering different types of content to different devices. Consumers want that content regardless of what device they're on. The third hypothesis says that mobile consumption is pluralizing into distinct modes of engagement. So there's the lean back mode of the tablet, good for brand advertising and open-mindedness, and then the lean forward active mode of the smartphone. So the smartphone is, we should see the smartphone as a VR device. We should be hitting people with direct response campaigns because they're in that lean forward mode and ready to make a purchase. There's a couple of reasons why I think this research is important for us to undertake, I think mainly is to challenge the status quo. I mean, when you're planning media, is it right to look at your own behaviour and model it out to the rest of the population? Should you be planning your brand's budget based on what you do and assuming that everyone uses their devices in the same way? Or do you want to back that up with some research and ask the questions? And the second point is that online advertising is one of the fastest changing industries I know of. So what we knew 2 years ago isn't necessarily going to be true today, and it's important to keep asking these questions and make sure that we're keeping up with the trends within the market. So as we go through the research, I want everyone here to kind of have a think about what devices they have and how they use those. In a moment, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. I'm going to try and work out the average number of devices that each person in this room has. So just while you add up, if you will, how many devices you think in your house actually connect to the internet. Just to give you an example, I live at home with my girlfriend in a shared house with 2 other friends. So between the 4 of us, we have 11 connected devices. So that's 4 laptops, 4 smartphones, there's 2 tablets, and there's a games console, all connected to the internet. So if you could just keep adding up how many you think you've got in your house, and I'll just ask for a show of hands. Is there anyone in the room that has 0 connected devices? Not 1 connected to the internet? Good. I'd probably say you're in the wrong room if that was the case. Anyone 1 to 2? Show of hands. 3 to 5? So a few with 3 to 5. 6 to 10? So far more with 6 to 10. 10 plus? Even more. 15 plus? A couple of you there. 20 plus? No, right, okay. Okay, so, 5 to 10, hovering around the 10 mark, I'd say, was average for the number of devices per household within this room. So immediately you can see the vast array of different devices that we need to target as advertisers. So on to the study then, and a little bit about the methodology. We split the research into 3 main phases. So the first was looking at benchmarking of usage. This was very much a quantitative part of the study, and it involved an online survey with over 1,000 participants. And we basically asked them questions about different devices they have, content, location, and advertiser formats. The second phase of the study looked at advertising effectiveness. Again, a quantitative part of the study, and it involved us recruiting a panel of regular media consumers, over 300 participants, and we set them consumption tasks and monitored the results and how they consume this media across different devices. And the third phase, much more qualitative, involved face-to-face interviews with about 10 plus people, really getting to grips with how they use these devices and asking kind of deeper questions about how they interact. So a little bit about the sample set, fairly split evenly gender-wise. It was a slightly more affluent sample and a little bit more leaning towards the family side, so much lighter on those living at home, singles living at home. So a very valuable demographic when it comes to advertising and a very commonly targeted group by advertisers. So onto the results. The results are split up into 3 different sections. The first was looking at content consumption by device. On the left here we have laptop users, in the middle tablet, and on the right smartphone. And we split content type into 3 main areas. So the pink sections here represent written content, the green is video, and the blue is gaming, so people playing games with these devices. And I think the first interesting thing to notice from this is just how much video is being consumed, particularly on tablets. So 41% of time spent on tablets was spent consuming videos. So that may not be surprising, seeing as the tablet is often touted as being the ultimate entertainment device, and we're seeing that this is more and more used for this very much entertainment activity. But also note it's pretty similar to that of laptops as well. So I'd say that the 2 of those look very similar. Often tablet is included in, when I say mobile, I mean from a branding point or an advertising point of view, that will include smartphones and tablets often as portable devices, mobile devices, but it looks like the similarity between mobile and tablet and laptops are the same. Secondly, of interest, I think if we look at smartphones, before having seen these results, I possibly would have geared towards thinking that more time would have been spent gaming on phones. I know I spend a lot of time addicted to Candy Crush at the moment. I'm sure many other people do as well, but only 23% of time spent on smartphones, or 28% was spent watching videos. So perhaps surprising that that much video is being consumed through smartphones. But if we stick with that, eMarketer have released some studies to say that video consumption on mobiles is just set to increase. So by 2017, they project that 48% of all mobile phone users will be using those phones to watch videos. Over 64% of digital video views of any kind will be using phones to do so. And I think there's a couple of driving factors that's behind this, and largely that any barriers to consuming video on a phone in the past are starting to disappear. So Wi-Fi connectivity is just increasing. There's more and more Wi-Fi hotspots for people to connect to. 3G and 4G speeds, you're getting faster download speeds than even in your own home now. And also data is becoming a lot cheaper. So previously, this barriers to watching video on the phone is starting to disappear. And if we look at tablet, again, eMarketer are reporting double-digit growth way into 2016. So by 2017, they project over 34 million tablet users. And I think just on this, I would say to any publishers in the room that if you do have video content, and perhaps you only have the facilities to deliver that through Flash, much of this market is dominated by one player, and that's Apple. So you'll probably be aware that Apple isn't compatible with Flash, so if you haven't invested in HTML5 video delivery, you're going to start losing a lot of your audience as they migrate over to tablets and they're not able to consume the video that you've created for them. So sticking with content then, I think if we delve down deeper into specific genres of content, what this slide will show you is that users don't really care what device they're on. They're more interested in the content they're looking for. So for example, if they're willing to read a news article, a written news article on a tablet, they're very likely to watch a news video on their tablet. Equally, if they're willing to read a sports article on their smartphone, they're likely to be watching sports videos on their smartphone. It's not the device that defines what content they're looking for. They'll use any device. It's their own taste and their own context that's defining that. So the next set of results looks at location. Again, we've got laptops, tablets, smartphones, and we split this out into 4 main locations. So the purple section here represents at home. The blue is out and about, green represents at work, and the pink here is travelling or commuting. And I think it's fairly obvious, the most amount of time spent consuming media is in the home. 47% of time spent on a laptop will be in the home, 42% on tablets. So clearly these are at-home, lean-back entertainment devices. But even more interesting than that, I think if we look at the smartphone again, so fairly evenly split there, I'd say, but 31% of time spent on a smartphone is within the home. So previously we've thought of mobile devices in advertising as this on-the-go device, perfect for DR marketing. Maybe they're out and about, they're walking, they're using their Maps feature. Now's the time to hit them with a McDonald's ad because they know they're just around the corner and they might go and make a purchase there. So that's true, that is a great device for that kind of advertising, but it's also true that people are using these in their home, and this is a good device to reach prime-time audiences consuming entertainment and long-form content. So a couple of other interesting points that came out, particularly from the face-to-face interviews, is when we talk to consumers, they don't really think of lean forward and lean back. All they care about is where are they and what are they trying to do. So the way they would describe it is that if I'm at home, I'm more in an exploration mood. I'm willing to browse and I'm looking for different types of content. I'm more open-minded, and then therefore that relates to they're probably more receptive to brand advertising. They're open to suggestions and they're browsing for different types of content. Equally, while they're out and about, they're far more task-based. So either they're standing at a train platform, they want to look up the next train time. They're looking for up directions on their map. Now's not the time to try and hit them with a 30-second branding message because they're just on the go and they're trying to achieve something. Equally, some other things that came out of our conversations with them is the propensity to purchase. Again, this isn't really defined by the device, more by the location. So there might be security issues over making a purchase on their phone while they're on the bus. They don't necessarily want someone looking over their shoulder. Or if they're connected to a public Wi-Fi, they're maybe not too keen on the security there. If they're in their own home, they're connected to their own Wi-Fi, away from prying eyes, there's no reason why they wouldn't make a purchase on a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop. Again, it's location and environment that's driving these decisions. So the last stage of the results looked at advertising effectiveness. So the first slide represents brand recall. So of those who were exposed to an ad, how many of them could remember the brand that they were shown? And clearly, pre-roll is the most effective format here. Over 3 times as effective in brand recall. Fairly good across all devices, slightly less on the smartphones there, but interestingly, banners twice as effective on smartphones than banners on laptops or desktops were. And I'd argue that's because often, if you're on a mobile optimized site, the banner will appear in view at the top of the page, fill up the screen, whereas on a laptop, it's quite likely that it might be out of view below the fold, not necessarily being viewed by the user. The next one was brand association. So was the message of that ad received? That kind of idea that they're trying to implant in the user, was that received? And again, clearly, video far more effective, twice as much brand association, but interestingly, look across all devices, hardly any change at all. So the ability of this creative to instill an idea in someone and to deliver a message doesn't really change depending on the device or the screen size. And then lastly, purchase intent. So this wasn't actually did the user buy something, but when surveyed, did they say they had the intention of buying something at some point? And again, pre-roll twice as effective than banners, and very similar across all devices. And it's probably not surprising that video is this far more effective format. I mean, you have the user's entire attention. You're probably playing this in full screen. There's not really anything else they can interact with while they're watching this video. So they are engaged and you've got their full attention. So next I'm just going to show you a short video. This is some of the face-to-face interviews that we actually had, so you can hear it in the user's own words, so to speak.
So my name's Adam, I'm 27 years old, I use my iPad.
My name's Vicky, I have an iPhone 5.
I'm Mark, I'm 42, I live here with my wife and several electronic devices. On a Sunday morning, I'll wake up, I'll read The Guardian on it, and then I'll sort of come downstairs and have a coffee and that.
I can only use this indoors at home, or somewhere where there's Wi-Fi. I'll generally sort of just be sat back and take my time with something.
I'm Layla, I have a HTC tablet, an iPod Touch and a BlackBerry Torch.
I use my phone when I'm out and about, just for anything. I'm checking it all the time.
Well, I don't really check my phone until I get on the bus. So I'll get on the bus, then I'll check my Twitter and my Instagram.
I think all adverts will probably have more success for me here in my house. On the street, I'll kind of disregard everything if it's something that's not relevant to me right then.
If I'm doing something out and about, I usually have a specific thing that I want to do. So I might click on it and then save it to look at home.
So I guess my perusing and my surfing habits change when I've got some downtime, because I might start thinking about buying a new pair of walking boots or a holiday or a flight or something like that.
You know, my commute's short and I do what I need to do before getting to work. I won't pay attention to ads at all. Whereas if I'm on my laptop and I'm, just shopping around, I'm on eBay, I'm just kind of bored at home alone on the internet, then yeah, I'm more susceptible to kind of picking them up and maybe clicking on something.
So what conclusions can we draw from what we've seen in this study? So I think firstly, lean forward and lean back is not about the screen, but it's about multivariate factors. So there's some screen involved, but it's also environment and it's also content. And we should be thinking about this when making plans for brand campaigns. If we want to target users in either of these modes, don't let the device influence your decisions. It's the content and it's the environment as well. Secondly, we consume the most amount of media at home, where we're also more receptive to brand advertising. So interestingly as well, that we saw the longest sessions were also within the home as well. So the most amount of time spent across all devices was in the home, and the longest sessions as well. So more likely to be relaxed and open to this brand messaging and consuming long form content, or at least a lot of content. Thirdly, video advertising, much more effective than banner advertising. Unsurprising there, but I would say if you're involved in publishing or advertising, it's even more evidence to back up where you should be spending your branding budgets. And then lastly, the consumer is ready. So again, we've seen that these barriers to people getting video content onto their smart devices or their portable devices are starting to disappear. So it's time to start freeing up this content, making your content available to users across all devices. So if we go back to our hypotheses, the first one, mobile marketing as a separate function, is now redundant. I'd argue that that rings pretty true. We've seen that behaviour doesn't change depending on device, it changes depending on context and environment. So why are we organising budgets separately per device? The second hypothesis, consumers and advertisers will behave the same around specific content regardless of device. Again, it seems that the results will back that up. And so while smartphones are used for out and about, all devices within the home are used for similar purposes. And the third hypothesis, so we should be thinking of tablet as this lean-back entertainment device, suitable for brand advertising, and we should look at mobile or smartphones as this on-the-go, lean-forward device. I'd argue that's not the case. It's clearly defined by where the user is and what it is they're trying to do. So what opportunities can we garner from what we've learned? So first of all, again, publishers, make all of your content available to all of your audience across all devices. The user knows what they're after. They're looking for a particular type of content. They're not going to change their device just because you've hidden it and made it less available to them. They're more likely to change publisher than they are to change device. In fact, they may well have up to 10 devices within their household. They might have a very suitable device for a particular task, but often they'll reach for the most convenient, and that is very often this little thing we keep on our person, the smartphone. And then secondly, brands, it's time to start planning more efficiently by targeting your users across their environment and context rather than looking at each individual device. So as technology catches up and we become more enabled to reach users across all devices, we should be able to drive down that inefficient and waste. So it seems that the behaviour doesn't change depending on device, but that's not to say that these devices aren't different. Of course these are different, and you should think of your media plans in that way. So you may well have a 30-second piece of TV creative, but you should be reformatting that and repurposing that depending on what device you're trying to reach. So if the device has a touch screen, make use of that touch screen. You can put in multiple points of interaction within a video creative. So here's an example of a campaign that we've run that made use of all the different devices. No, sorry.
State Farm, this is Jessica.
Hey, Jessica! Jerry Newman with a policy question.
Jerry, how are you doing?
Fine. Got a little fender bender.
Oh, Jerry, I'm so sorry. I would love to help, but remember you dropped us last month.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It only took 15 minutes to sign up with that new auto insurance company, but it's taken a lot longer to hear back.
Is your car up a pole again?
I miss you, Jessica.
Jerry, are you crying?
No, I bit my tongue.
Get to a better state. State Farm.
So with that, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions. It looks like we've gotten through that pretty quickly. So is there any questions for anyone? It's all pretty straightforward. Yes?
Did you do any testing on connected televisions?
Not in this particular study.
I saw that was all smaller screens.
Yeah, so our technology does enable us to deliver this interconnected TVs. I would say that market is a little bit immature to conduct kind of wide-level research at the moment, just as the adoption of those devices hasn't quite increased enough yet. But this is.
Can you say anything just from your opinion, how you think it could be different?
So I think I'd argue that those, again, that's a fixed device, so that's going to stay within the living room. The television is always going to stay like that. I'm sure that we're going to see differences in the way that people interact. It's going to become more measurable, certainly. But in terms of comparing it with these devices that we have here that can kind of move around with the user, perhaps it wouldn't be lumped into the same kind of idea as these devices were. Anything else? Okay, all right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, the advertisement owners, I hear that they're mostly not okay if their advertisements are actually transcoded or go through a post-processing for changing resolution and things like that to adapt the end device, and they're not really happy with that. And how do you deal with that problem? If I'm the State Farm, for example, I prepare a high definition or really nice advertisement, right? And then just to squeeze it into a small iPhone screen or another smartphone screen. You somewhat post-process it, or you reduce the resolution, you get rid of some nice textures and things like that. And most likely I'm not going to be okay with that.
I see what you're saying. I've heard that argument before. So maybe not State Farm. Someone spent $1 million on some beautiful, creative, high def, beautiful landscapes and stuff. It's meant for the big screen, and then you're putting it on this small tablet, iPhone screen or smartphone screen. But I think we saw there in some earlier slides is that the ability for those creatives to instill an idea, that brand recall, that brand association, wasn't affected across all devices. So anyone that was exposed to those same messages, whether it be on a laptop or a smartphone, they were still able to recall the message that those ads were delivering. So maybe it's ideal to watch these beautiful creatives on a larger screen, but again, if the purpose is to sell products, it doesn't seem to be limited by the different devices. Anything else? So I would say that this entire study is available in its full on our website. So if you want to go to YuMe.com, you can download the entire study. It will have far longer videos with all our panel and far more data. And this is a bit of a condensed version of the full study, but by all means go there and download that. And if anyone has any other questions, I'll be hanging around for the rest of the day. And you can reach me on my email at bcarney@yume.com. But other than that, thanks for your time.